physical picture of the world that comes out of Newton and goes, it's the physical picture of the world that people were slowly building up from Galileo and Newton through the end of the 19th century with figures like Maxwell and so on. It has several, I don't know how to characterize the classical view of the world succinctly, but well, maybe this is helpful, okay? Newton had the following thought, or the following thought is implicit in what's now called the Newtonian picture of the world. All the material objects in the world consist ultimately of point particles, okay? And these particles move around in space according to the Newtonian equations of motion, F equals ma, okay? And if you want to know about the behaviors of tables or chairs or desks or cars or people, all you have to do in principle is analyze those objects into their constituent Newtonian particles, see how those particles are moving around. The laws of the motions of these particles, according to Newton, are fully deterministic, okay? If you know the positions and velocities of all the particles at some initial moment, and you know what kinds of particles they are, that is, what their electric charges are, what their masses are, so on, so that you can calculate the kinds of forces that they're exerting on one another. Everything is determined by those initial conditions. Good. As you go through the 18th and 19th century, you need some tweaks on that that have to do with phenomena of electricity and magnetism. It turns out that in addition to these particles, there's pressure on you to countenance the existence of other kinds of fundamental physical things called fields. These get affected in various ways by charges and motions and so on and so forth. And by the end of the 19th century, you have this physics of this soup of fields and particles, okay, moving around according to Newton's laws for the particles and Maxwell's equations for the electric and magnetic fields. And they constitute together a deterministic account of how everything evolves. So basically, forget about the electromagnetic stuff. If you're on the Newtonian picture of the world, what it is to have a complete history of the world is to have a list of the positions of all the particles in the world at all times, okay? That's the complete history of the world. Given that information, where every particle in the world was at every particular temporal instant, you can read off where the tables and chairs were, where the universities were, who got married to who sued who said what. These can all eventually be reduced to claims about how these point particles are moving, okay? In philosophical terms, we say all the other language we want to use about the history of the world supervenes on the language of the motions of these particles, can be read off in principle from the information about the motions of these particles. That's what the world consists in. You want to know the possible situations that the world could be in? It's all the possible positions in space that the particles could occupy at any particular moment. You want to know the possible histories of the world? It's all the possible motions that those particles could execute from t equals minus infinity to t equals plus infinity. That's the fundamental metaphysical structure of the world.